welcome back to Study on Spotlight. How many episodes are we in now?
We are in too many episodes. Sounds good.
We have Sarah here today, so from the UK Oswestry School. So would you like to introduce yourself and
my pleasure.
Your experience and how many years?
My name's Sarah Hicklin. I'm Director of Admissions at Oswestry School, and I've had the pleasure of working with Dadi personally for the last 12 years. I represent one of the oldest schools in the UK, so Oswestry School is over 600 years old.
600?
Wait, how is that? Is that
1407 is when it was founded, and I think I'm probably one of the oldest directors of admissions in the UK. I've been at Oswestry School for 24 years.
Wow.
So the first 10 years as a parent, so my 4 children all went to the school, and then 14 years ago I switched roles, and then I started working for the school. So I think I'm unique. I've been there for 24 years, and I've worn 2 different hats. I've worn the hat as a mum and also working for the school. So I think it gives me a good perspective, a good knowledge about it.
So you must know Oswestry very well.
I know the school pretty well, yeah.
How much has the school changed, actually, from your perspective?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that, because what made me choose Oswestry School for my children, because we were living in London, and Oswestry is about 3.5 hours from London, so it was a big change, and we looked at a few schools within a radius. What made me choose Oswestry? I really liked the atmosphere. So nothing that I couldn't take a photo of the atmosphere, but I could feel it. And I did wonder over the years how it's remained like that, and it has. The campus has improved dramatically, especially over the last few years. There's been a big investment, but the actual ethos and the feeling behind the school, that hasn't really changed. So staffing has changed, campus is much better, the boarding facilities are much better, but the thing that as a parent that first attracted me has never changed. It's still it's a kind school, and that's what I was looking for my kids.
Do you think with such a long history, is there anything that influences the school in like making it a bit more special as well, besides the care part, or because they have so much history as well?
I think it's that feeling of heritage. I think when you come to Oswestry School, whether you stay for 2 years or whether you're there for 7 years, it's not going to really matter. The most important thing is you feel part of the school community, and you also feel part of the local community, because the school is very much, the town grew up around the school. It's not the other way around.
How big is the town?
The town has in total about 20,000 people living there, but I mean, it's a tiny town. But it has, I think, one of the things that maybe the students like the best is it has a Marks and Spencer's food hall.
It has important.
Some really good supermarkets nearby. Has a fantastic Thai restaurant, which is takeaway, which is really popular. So the kids can walk out of the school and go into town, but they feel very much part of the community. So it's not Harry Potter, it's not isolated. You feel very much part of the school, part of the town, and it gives you a sense of belonging, and that's, I feel, something really important.
It does, because like being in London, I can't imagine studying in London. It's that kind of buzzing.
Well, everybody thinks they want to be in London. I mean, that's where we moved up from. And I mean, obviously it's my hometown and all my children were born there. But London's like many cities, Hong Kong's slightly unique, I think, because it's so safe compared to many European cities. I think even for university students going to London, you don't get that campus life, which you do get in some of the others. And I think that especially post-pandemic, I think for students, whatever age they are, even if they're doing a master's degree, to be in a university where you've got a feeling of there's a campus and you've got that support network is hugely important.
I mean, with so many, international students going in and out, and you've been in the school for 20-something years already, is there like a larger international student community there now, or maybe there's more people moving there?
Yes, it's increased and it's diversified. When I first joined the school as a parent 24 years ago, obviously at that time, Hong Kong students, some students from mainland China, and that was tended to be it. There wasn't a huge mix of nationalities, but now we've got 30 plus nationalities. It's unbelievable. We welcome students from all over the world, from as far west as Mexico, and then as far east as Thailand, Hong Kong. But to be honest, the only nationality that we tend not to have a huge amount of students from is from the mainland, because most of our boarding is European. So that makes a really nice mix for a third of the school is boarding, but most of the boarding is European. So the common language that everybody has to speak is English.
That's
so for the
very important.
European student, do they come and study short term, or do they
No,
stay
it's
for-
increasingly popular now because I think many countries are seeing this, that for instance in the German education system is not very flexible. It's quite rigid, and the style of teaching is quite formal, and this isn't so students are changing, and what they need in order to thrive and fulfill their potential is changing, and this very strict form of education is not really popular. So even German students are coming to us and doing maybe 4 years, they're doing GCSEs and then staying on for A-level. To get technical, we don't offer the international baccalaureate, but you can still, A-levels are still acceptable for universities, European universities. You just have to make sure that you choose the right combination of subjects, humanities, science and maths. So as long as you choose the right A-levels, you can go to a university in Germany or Holland or wherever you like. Because so many are now teaching the courses in English.
Okay. I mean, from your memory, do you think most students from Asia, do they tend to graduate, stay in UK, or do they go anywhere
UK
else?
is still really popular, but we're also seeing students increasingly going out to America.
Oh.
Or possibly doing their undergraduate in UK and then going for their masters in America. That's really popular. Some looking to go Australia, maybe, but not so much. And European universities are becoming increasingly popular. Depends on the cities, but if you're looking at somewhere like in Holland, Utrecht, it's a really nice city, cost of living quite low, university fees are quite low, so those kinds of places can be quite popular.
Okay.
Because you just mentioned about the US, because US do have a very different education system compared
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
UK. So how students adapt, or how they prepare for the
Well, I think increasingly for British schools, well, we've always felt like this, and I think perhaps the rest of the world's catching up. For us, it's what we call a 360-degree education. So you're looking at educating the student academically. Now, obviously, to get into a British school, you have to be at a certain level anyway to be able to use the technical firm to access the curriculum. So there's your academic side, but also its mental resilience is one of the huge factors. So that by the time you do go on to the States or Canada, wherever you want to go on to university, you're able to cope. And that's the most important thing. Spoon-feeding education, which does happen in certain countries, is all well and good while the students are there. But when they then progress to university, they can find it really, really tough. So I think it's always been the tradition of UK education that it's academic, and it's also everything that happens outside of the classroom as well, so that by the time the student goes on to university, they're fully equipped academically and mentally to be able to cope with the isolation, the loneliness that you can feel, and to realise that you have to reach out. The support's there, but you maybe have to ask for it. You won't be given it.
Yeah. I mean, it's very important. Actually, it's something that I think a lot of Asian parents don't really focus on is, when parents ask, it's always about which school has the best academics, high ranked in terms of destinations. But from our perspective, when we look at, just talk to partners in general, they talk about a lot more on about how they take care of the students. It's not the focus that parents look at as well. So I feel like there's a very different mindset.
And personal development, and
Exactly.
personal skills.
Absolutely. And I mean, I would say that it's something, obviously, with my four, I mean, my eldest daughter is now 37, so we're going back some years. But I can remember the first thing that I did was look at school rankings. And then I realised that, they're a really useful tool, and it'll give you an overview. But the most important thing is to talk to experts, people who actually know the schools and can help you find for your child, your most precious thing, the right school for that child. And you asked me why UK schools, it's always been so popular. I think it's just this feeling that you can be straight A student. I've got the classic example. One of my daughter's school friends from London, all that time ago, went to a highly selective girls' school, very, very highly selective girls' school, and then went on to Oxford my daughter went from Oswestry to Cambridge. So my daughter at Oswestry, a non-selective school, so she had a lot of input into help her get a balanced education. Her friend, who'd been at a very selective school where there perhaps maybe wasn't such a balance, a very high-ranking school, the focus had been on the academics. When that girl started Oxford, the first term was a bit of a culture shock because she'd been used to being in a school with just girls, and suddenly she was in a co-educational environment, living environment, educational environment, and the whole shock of not being spoon-fed, having to actually, nobody was saying, how's your day gone? Did you eat? Are you finding the assignment difficult? Don't forget about that deadline. She'd been used to this at school. And I would say that my daughter at Cambridge, because she'd been at a school like Oswestry, very similar to lots of other British schools, where she'd been learnt these skills, she'd learnt to look after herself, to ask for help if she needed it, but to actually vocalise that and to have some resilience. Her experience at Cambridge was better than her friends who went to Oxford. Okay. The girl who went to Oxford did really well, but my daughter stayed at Cambridge for 9 years, and she's now, her husband is now, he teaches at Cambridge, and my daughter's now just got a fantastic job as the lead historian on a project at King's College. She's a well-known academic in her field, and we put it down. I never had any problem with her studying. Where she needed the support and help was to learn to switch off, socialise, just all those things. That's where that education for her was really important. So I'm a passionate believer in schools that offer that really overall feeling that you're a valued member of the school, whether you're good at sports or you're good at academics. That's great, but how can the school support you and help you develop in the areas where maybe you don't feel so confident? And that's what a lot of schools in the UK, I think, do.
And not many students are really capable of being in that competitive environment, especially with the very academic schools. So everyone is competing about your grades or your marks, and having that, as you said, is not healthy for mentally.
I think that type of environment where you're in a very highly competitive environment, does that prepare you for university? I would say not. And does that prepare you for the world of work? I would say not. I would say being in an environment where you learn to value everyone for their skills and you support each other in the areas where you need supporting, and you help teach people in the areas that they need that education. Surely that's a better way to prepare for university and eventually for life.
Absolutely. I mean, what's one thing that you see is very common among international students after studying through Oswestry? Like any type of changes in particular?
I think I'm going to say a word that I hope won't frighten anyone. It's independence. And I mean that in a very positive way. I remember a family saying to me, and for the father it was like the biggest shock. He said when his son came back, the first thing he noticed was his son brought down his laundry in a basket. And instead of it lying on the floor for 2 weeks, he actually brought it down. He was taking responsibility for himself. I think any child that comes to a UK school, any fee-paying school, they're in a privileged position. So these children need to be aware they're very lucky. They're being given an advantage in life that not everyone has. So it's making sure that you're aware of that. And I think that, to me, is one of the pleasures. I never realised this job would be so rewarding, because the pleasure I get in seeing boys and girls come in, often about 14 years old, and by the time they leave, they're independent, but they're humble. They're very grateful to their families for the sacrifices that they've made. I mean, not just financial, but also emotionally. It's very hard to let go of your children and trust someone else to bring them up. So they're very aware of that. They're aware of the privilege that they've had, and they're determined to go out and fulfill their potential. It's no good getting your parents or someone else telling you, you have to feel that yourself. And if you can give children that, young people that, and this gift, and it is a gift of mental resilience in a very difficult world, then I think we've done our job well.
Especially if I remember being in boarding school. It's it's a very small community, but it kind of reflects the society as well.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
you have like different grade. You will be living in different years with students above you, younger than you. You have to take care of the younger ones as well as like looking up into the older girls and boys.
And there'll be the sporty ones. There'll be the academic ones. There'll be the lazy ones that need to be pushed a bit. There'll be the overachievers who need to be told, you know, pace yourself. You don't have to finish everything. You know, everybody, we can always learn and we can always listen. And those are two other attributes that I would say. They always say the cleverest person in the room is the person that speaks last. So I don't know if that's the...
It's my turn to speak now. See what I did there? see what I did there? No, but it's very interesting because I agree about that part. Like a lot of students and parents, when they first asked, it was always about the academics. But when they actually go and then we follow up with them and then come back and talk to us, they never really mention about the academic side.
No.
They just say, my child has changed so much. They talk about their behavior, their attitude, and they're more maybe extroverted and they've changed a lot more as well. So it's a type of mindset that it's a very interesting thing to see. They always have a different way. We see that initially it felt like they were talking about academics only. And then when they actually went, they were actually seeing there's so much changes in a student. And they focus a lot more talking about their child changing as a person rather than their academics improving a lot more.
That's true. I think very much so, and I think also you have to remember that the rigorous inspections that UK boarding schools specifically, which are the schools obviously I know about, the rigorous inspection processes that they go through, you know, the academics is going to be good.
Yeah.
So it's really finding out, and that's where it's difficult. And to my mind, even if you were visiting the UK, you know, you're always going to be thinking, oh, is that school better? Is that school better? Oh, maybe I could try this one. To talk to somebody who knows the schools, who has past experience, who understands what the processes are, what each school is like, whether is going to suit that student or the other. I always say to families, please try and find somebody that you can sit down and talk to who knows the schools, and they will give you the best advice and help you find the best school to suit your child and their needs.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, as a mother as well, and with your experience in admissions and talking with international parents, what do you think is the best way or like an advice you can give them in how should they choose a school for their children?
Listen to the advice that you're going to get from, you know, Oswestry, for instance, in Hong Kong, we work with a couple of really trusted partners, and they are the best person to talk to. So if a parent contacted me directly, I would refer them, for instance, to you guys and say, look, please contact Dadi, talk to them, and they will give you a really honest overview and make sure that Oswestry is going to match your child, because it's not in our interest or that family's that it's not the right match. So are they looking for a big school? Are they looking for a small school? It's trying to find out about the personality of the child and where they're going to thrive and fulfill their potential. And the most important thing is be happy. Because if you're happy and you're relaxed, you're open to new experiences, new learning, you're going to take advantage of every opportunity. If you feel stressed, you don't.
Yeah. I mean, do you have an advice for students who might already be ready to go to the UK now for high school? Do you have any advice for them, like any mindset, anything to prepare for?
I think go with an open mind. As I say, make sure that you prepare yourself in the sense of talk to somebody who has some experience at that school before you go. And when you get there, take each day as it comes. It's not a prison sentence, you know. Especially the way schools are at the moment. I think mental well-being is so important. You know, the world, since the pandemic, the world seems to have become even more stressful. So I would say these are the few years in your life now before you go on to university and work that you can actually enjoy school, which perhaps sounds like a sort of oxymoron, because enjoy school, working, but you should be enjoying these years. You've got the opportunity to study, find new hobbies, find new sports that you never tried before, make new friends, try new food, all new experiences. So keep an open mind and just take it a day at a time. It's not forever, and the time will go really, really quickly.
But what if students really get stressed, like when throughout the process, the journey doing in Oswestry and studying for that GCSE in A level? So, what advice will you give, like, to talk to someone or any other schools?
Yes, I mean, luckily, once they're in the school, because there is such a structure in place, they probably wouldn't get really stressed. We have, for instance, we have a staff meeting once a week, and if there are any students of concern, now that could be a British student or an overseas student, anyone, somebody will voice up and say, just to let you know, so-and-so is a bit worried about something, please look out for them, and if you see that they're looking concerned. So it's amazing how each student is treated as an individual. And not only are these things verbalised, they're also, you know, there's a sort of record so that we can keep an eye on them and help them. And there's no stigma to this whatsoever. But it doesn't really escalate, it doesn't really get that far. But I would say that if any parents in Hong Kong are worried about their children and thinking, because I know the system here is very competitive, is making young people very stressed, even in their extracurricular, even if they're doing, you know, music lessons, they get stressed about what grades they should be at in their music or whatever. So if you are considering education overseas, don't put it off. Better to do it younger rather than later. For your child's mental well-being, I would say try and do it at the earliest opportunity. And yes, it's a little bit more expensive to go that year earlier, but the dividend, the benefits, and the value of that outweigh the cost.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned about the stress on students, but for high school, I think it's not always about student stress, but the parents as well.
Yes, absolutely.
When the students are overseas, they're so stressed, they don't know what their child's doing, what's happening, and they don't know if they're, because it's probably the first time they're not staying with their parents. So we feel that, do you have any advice or any way of telling parents how to feel at ease or be more comfortable when they send their child overseas? Because there are a lot of cases is, you know, they want their child to have that opportunity. They might even be able to afford it, but they're just so scared of sending their child to somewhere that maybe they haven't been themselves. Again,
I would say boarding schools is something known. I would homestay. We don't offer homestay, for instance. Ours is boarding school only because it's a known, it's regulated. Everybody knows where we are in terms of provision that we offer. For parents, I think it is hard. It's letting go of that. You've got to trust somebody else. But, you know, most schools have been established for hundreds of years, and like in Oswestry's case, over 600 years. You know, we have a proven track record. Your child will be fine. But as a parent, you will feel anxious. No news is good news. The biggest complaint we get from parents is, especially the start of the academic year, I'm really worried I've not heard from my son or daughter. And I'm trying to say,
that's so common, though.
She's having fun.
She's busy, she's enjoying life. Don't worry, you'll soon hear if there's a problem.
Yep.
And then sometimes parents might say, oh, they've complained about the food or the weather, you know, things that are totally beyond our control. In which case, I say thank you for letting us know, because for us, that's normally an indicator that the student is a bit homesick. Because not many teenagers are going to call their parents and say, I'm really homesick. But they might say, oh, it's not stopped raining here, or oh, it's really cold. So when you start, or I don't like the food, it's horrible.
Randomly complaining.
And so they'll complain about something else. So we always say to parents, if you get any feedback like that, please let us know. It's never a problem, because that helps us then approach the student and say, how are you doing? How's everything? And just make sure that they feel okay, and then they can share that. But house parents aren't called house parents for no reason. They do act as parents and really look after students. So they're always there if parents want the reassurance. But the one piece of advice I would say to parents, especially, I can say this as a mother to other mothers, don't keep calling. Just if you're concerned, contact the school. By all means, email the house parents and say, just wanted to check, you know, I've not heard from my son, I just want to check everything's okay. But don't keep calling your child, because sometimes they might not be calling because maybe they are a bit homesick and it could trigger. So best to just leave them. No news is good news. Let them just, and there'll be good days and there'll be bad days, but eventually the good days will far outweigh the bad days, and the overall experience is really good.
It's part of life, right? You can stay here and you can still have bad days.
Exactly.
It's not going to change.
Exactly.
Yeah, and back to the question especially, I think there's another thing that is important is trust to your child, to be honest. It's the parents trusting their children to be honest. Because being in that environment, because my parents, like, they told me one thing, well, we have 8 hours, 7 hours time difference between.
Go away.
Even when you call me, I'm sleeping. Like, because like after school at 4 o'clock, Hong Kong will be 12.
Yes.
My parents literally, the first answer will be, I'm going to bed now, so don't call me and stop complaining. But my parents told me that. But my parents actually gave a lot of trust. They were saying, well, you're in that education system. You're so close to the teachers and resources. So you can get instant advice from them rather than me sending emails and back and forth with and having that kind of time.
Exactly. So
if
they've got but there is the reassurance there. But I would also say, you touched on something there, and I would say that one of the best value things at school is everything's in the campus. The lessons are in the campus, the after school activities are in the campus, the sports, everything. So instead of that thing of children having to go backwards and forwards all the time for music lessons and then come back and then go for a dance lesson and come back, it's all there. So their actual free time, they have a bit more downtime in between things. I think young people I just think they're under so much pressure. You know, social media, everything like this. It's wonderful to see them just enjoying themselves. You know, put the phone down. Just actually enjoy that face-to-face contact.
Do you think the pressure that children are facing these days are from peers, parents, academic? Do you think there's any particular weight, like which one's more?
In the UK or from here in Hong Kong?
I would say from UK.
From the UK, I think there will be pressure academically. Well, not pressure. I think there is an expectation. You know, you need to be working to your potential.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't matter how clever you are. If you're not working to your potential, then you need to work harder.
Because you do like review the performance every term.
Yes, every term,
and sit down and talk about.
And often you know, they're having tests, and the whole. I always say, when children say to me, "I'm really worried about the tests," sometimes they'll come to me and I'll say, all a test is doing is working out where the gaps are. You need to know where the gaps are. It's like trying to build a wall. If there's a big hole, you know, we need to know every couple of weeks in maths, for instance, have you understood so far where we are? And don't forget, English education, British education is very interactive. It's not like a teacher at the front of the classroom and you just copy it out. You have to understand what you're being taught. There's no point just repeating it. You've got to understand it. So I think my honest opinion is children put themselves under a lot of pressure.
Oh, so it's actually self-pressure.
I think it can be. I think there's, as you say, peer pressure. I think older students we're finding, well, I say older students, if you look at what I would call Gen Z, which is sort of, you know, late 20s now, I mean, so many young people of that generation in the UK are making a point of using social media as little as possible because it's all fake and it's all it's just making you a consumer.
It's a distraction from
it's a distraction. It's trying to sell you things all the time. That's basically what it is. But obviously 12, 13-year-olds don't get it. They think it's great. So part of the education is going to be that you know, it's if it's fun, it's good, but when it stops being fun, you need to put it down. So there's that. But I think young people can put themselves under a lot of pressure. I think for girls, I sound very old-fashioned, I think there is still a gender difference. I think girls traditionally as well, it was always teenage girls putting themselves under a lot of pressure. I think boys now, we're seeing it come up more, usually a bit later. I think most 14-year-old boys are still, you know, too busy gaming to really worry about too much about their academic grades, and their parents are going crazy, and as they get a bit older. But obviously that will change, and I think it'll get younger and younger. But I think part of a school's job, I keep going back to the same thing, but part of the school's job is education, educating about social media, educating about how much time you're spending on a screen or gaming and what it's doing to your head. And is it actually making you feel good? If it's relaxing and you're doing it for 30 minutes, well, maybe that's okay. But, you know, don't disappear for 2 hours down this sort of, you know, rabbit hole of whatever. But I think also it's that so much is fake news or fake influencers and this type of thing. But our job is to help children not feel under pressure. The only person that they need to really please is themselves. You know, although children can be very difficult when they're in their teenage years, ultimately, they love their parents. They want to do well. They may not show it at 14 or 15, but they do feel that deep down inside. And if we can just help them show that and do that, I think we're doing a good service for the parents.
Oh, that just reminds me of something I want to ask. As a mother as well, you know, you have few children, you know, when the children are in the rebellious years, what are the advice would you give for parents? What's the best way to communicate with their children, especially if they want to make such a big move, maybe sending them overseas, but then they're not really communicating good enough?
I think, well, I can only give you my personal opinion.
Of course.
I think don't shout, be my first thing. Shouting, kids just switch off. It really doesn't get you anywhere, and then you just feel cross, and that doesn't get anywhere. I think try and understand the pressures that young people are under. I'm not sure, I mean, obviously I'm a lot older than your parents, the generation of parents now. I'm an older generation, but, you know, be kind. I think the more you can say, I'm really sorry that you're feeling angry, or I'm really sorry that you're feeling stressed, you know, it might be difficult for you to accept, but we are here to help you, and we want what's best for you. As I say, although they may not admit it, they want to do well, but they feel under so much pressure that it's a very unusual young person that's going to turn around and say, actually, I want to go to a really good university and I want to get a really good job. How many 14-year-olds are going to say that? When everywhere around them, they're not pretty enough, they're not clever enough, they're not good looking enough if they're a boy, they don't have enough friends. They're just being constantly told, you're not this, you're not that, getting very negative information. So I think as a parent, I mean, it's the balance. You know, my kids used to say, oh, please don't keep saying, because I used to say, I love you so much, whatever you want to do. And they'd be like, oh, don't keep saying that, Mum, don't keep saying that. But of course you do as a parent, but I think it's just being realistic, saying it's tough out there, you know. Let's just, and often listening to a third party. You might not want to hear something from your parents, but if you can sit down and speak with an educational counsellor or somebody like that, and they can talk to that young person and say, we'd really like to help you. And sometimes the parents should not be in the same room when that conversation is happening. The child will be more receptive and open if it's just them, and the third party say, actually, you know what, you think your parents are giving you a hard time, but they're really trying to help you. And then you can help them unpick this defensive attitude. But, you know, also as a parent, remember what you were like at that age. You gave your parents a hard time, I expect, too, so...
That's true. Oh, that makes so much sense. That's what we call education counselors, right?
Yes, it is.
We're not just consultants. We counsel. Like, it makes so much more sense.
You counsel parents, but you're also counselling the children. But just, you know, don't shout, and be kind, and try and remember. I mean, I know for me it's a very long time ago, but, you know, as a parent, try and remember how you felt at that age, and you didn't have all the pressures that young people have now. They're under a lot more pressure.
It is more competitive now, don't you reckon? Like,
yeah, and the whole world is a big mess. So.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
And they probably feel quite angry because, look, things are not as great as they were 10 years ago. So, you know, they probably feel it's okay for you because it was easier when you were younger.
Of course. I mean, a lot of parents are, you know, they always compare their days to, you know, the younger children. They figure that, you know, by 20 or 18, you should have like a very clear pathway, knowing what you're doing. But nowadays, it's just very different.
It's very different.
Many information out there, especially.
And there's so many different opportunities, industry changes, and the demand changes. Like, I know, I understand maybe in our parents' years, by 18, 20 something, maybe they're already working, maybe they're not they have a pathway, they have a direction and a responsibility. But nowadays, 20-something, they might still be exploring themselves.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Because like everyone expects you have a degree, so everyone's focusing on your academic and
Exactly.
working early age is not.
But have a decisive pathway. This is how you're doing it. This is how you're going. You don't explore. Like, you're already in your 20s. But my mindset is, well, you're only in your 20s. It makes so much more sense to explore now. Isn't it different though?
But how about the students in school? How do you like guide them to explore their career path, as you mentioned, like in the early age? Or?
Well, I think the most important thing to do is to keep as many doors open as possible in education, because even when young people have a very clear idea, you might have somebody doing their GCSEs at 14, 15, 16 who says, I want to be an engineer, or I want to be going to biomedicine or whatever. But then that can change. So it's really important. You stress that GCSE grades are important. So try and get the best set of GCSE grades as you can. You know, better to do fewer subjects and get higher grades. This would be our advice. And then while that process is going on and you can see the predicted grades, you can see where your strengths are. Contrary to other countries, the UK's A-level pathway is a lot more flexible than many other countries. So the only degree courses where you have to do specific A-levels are engineering, medicine, veterinary nursing, something like this, or veterinary doctor. But anything else, it's quite flexible. The most important thing is your grade at A-level. So, which is, I think, really beneficial. So it means that by the time they're almost, by the time they're sort of Christmas time in the year of GCSE examinations, you're looking at predicted grades, so they can start thinking about A-levels. But I always made sure with my 4 children, because they all went on to Russell Group universities and all did something totally different. As I say, medieval history, Chinese language. My son ended up doing Chinese at Edinburgh, and he then went to work in Shenzhen for a few years. I have another daughter who did Russian translation, and she's now actually teaching at the University of Bristol. She teaches Russian translation. And then one who did criminology. So they all did totally different pathways. But I said, try and keep your A-level subjects. If you can do maths, do maths. Maths A-level will open a lot of doors. Don't get too niche. The other thing is try and choose, if possible, if you are Russell Group material or QS grade university material, top 100, try and choose the more traditional A-level subjects. If you're applying for a different type of university, but for instance, if you want to do law at a top UK university, your best combination of A-level subjects would be history, English and a language. Not necessarily law as A-level. So, but all schools have a really, really strong sixth form, head of sixth form, guidance counsellors who can talk to them about what they want to do. And a lot of, you'd be amazed, I would say probably 70% have no idea what they want to do.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, well, I want to be a businessman, and it's like, okay. Or I want to be rich. We've had that quite a few times. Well,
I want to be an influencer or something as well.
So I think it's just a question of just trying to choose a combination of subjects that will open as many doors as possible. To open, and if you choose something like, history or maths or whatever, you can really do any undergraduate course you want, as long as you've got a good grade. So that tends to be what the university's entrance criteria will be: the grades, not the subjects. Where it is trying to find out what subject they want to do, and that's where most schools will have a really good schedule of university visits. And to be honest, the online information now is really useful, providing you have somebody there who has first-hand experience of the universities and can say, that might look good, but maybe they're not the best one for you. And my only other piece of advice is don't underestimate some universities that might not be a high-ranking university, but for that specific course, they might be the best university in the UK. So again,
Yes.
just as rankings affect schools, it doesn't always affect university, and it can be slightly different. And in which case you listen to your educational consultant back in your own country, because they'll have experience with hundreds of students that they've helped go through. And also at school, your head of sixth form, who will have been through the same process. And between those two different camps, you're going to get some really good advice. But yeah, keep open minds.
Amazing. Time. I mean, time's almost there. I mean, before we wrap it up, is there anything you want to say to the audience as well about the school? Any messages to parents?
I just say to parents, it's going over what we said. I think it's really, I can't think of a more difficult time to be a teenager, a young adult at the moment. I think no matter how frustrating you may find your child, or you get anxious, it's understandable. Be kind to yourself, because it's understandable. You really want the best for them. That's what you want. They know that. They may not show it to you, but they do know it. And really find somebody who you can sit down and talk to and tell them everything about your child. Don't just focus on the good things. If there's things that you're worried about, be open. Talk to somebody like you guys, and then say, what would you recommend as a good what should be the next steps for them? And then, just as I've said, listen to your child, listen to an educational consultant, an educational counsellor, and then when you've got that information, help your child make that next step, because it's really the best gift you can give them.
Amazing. Sounds good. All right. Thank you again for your time today.
Well, it's a pleasure. I've loved being here, and I've loved being with you. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Sarah.
much. All right. To the audience, if you have any questions about Oswestry School or anything about education, feel free to contact us, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.